Welcome to the video course on calculation for club players. I'm Grandmaster Davorin Kuljasevic, and in this course I will try to use my knowledge and my experience both as a chess player and also as someone who has worked with a lot of club players on improving this very important skill, the skill of calculation. And my goals in this course will be firstly, to eliminate a lot of elementary mistakes that club players tend to make in the calculation process. Secondly, to offer sort of a structured way of calculating variations that you can rely on in different calculation scenarios. And thirdly, to improve visualization. So this is basically the ability to visualize, to see in your mind a certain position that happens after 2 or 3 moves of calculation that you don't really see on the board. It has to happen in your mind first before you make the moves, and then it arises on the board. And this is one of the sort of sub-skills that I see that a lot of club players struggle with. And really, this is, I think, where the most improvement can be made. So, calculation, as you, I'm sure, are aware, is probably the key skill to have for a chess player. It is like, I will try to use an analogy from another sport. It's like in football. If you're not really a good runner, you can hardly compete on a high level. You will run out of steam, and then you will not be able to contribute on the football field as you would if you can run a lot. So similarly in chess, if you can calculate only 1 or 2 moves ahead and not more, you will start avoiding some positions where calculation is very important. You will not be able to calculate maybe the winning variation, and you will make mistakes. And chess as a game where at some point, calculation of the winning variation or drawing variation decides the outcome of the game, really doesn't allow you to make good results with limited calculation skills. And this is the reason why I think it's important to study it more carefully, to have a solid framework for calculation. And this is what we will try to do in this course. Now, the key for improving your calculation skill is practice. So practice and then more practice. There are really no superior methods. Maybe some methods are slightly more efficient than others, but there's really no method of calculation that will give you instant results. There are no shortcuts basically. You just have to do as much calculation practice as you can. With good exercises, of course. So also in this course I will try to stress this as much as I can, and you will see in the PGN files that come with the course that you will get enough practice material to improve your calculation. Now let us take a look at some concrete ideas that we will discuss in the course. So firstly, the principle when you're calculating variations, what is the first thing that you have to do? It is not actually to calculate variations, but you have to stop. We can take a look at the position on the board here. You have to stop and look what would your opponent play if it was his move. So let's say that in this position you are black and you're trying to find a good move. Do you start calculating variations immediately? Most people do. They start evaluating the position and just try to come up with a good move for black. But the thing is here that before you start calculating anything, the best thing to do is just to imagine if it was white to move. What would he play? What would your opponent play if you just gave him a free move? So this is what we call prophylactic thinking. In other words, you just give your opponent a move, and let's see here what white would play. I think that it's immediately clear that if it was white to move, he would play bishop f4, attacking your queen. When you move the queen, he takes your bishop on c7, you take it back with your queen, and then it's not the end, because white can take the rook here, and when you take your queen, basically the pawn on c6 is pinned. So we can see it like if you play a move like h5, for instance. This is what happens. You move the queen, takes, and now you see the pawn is pinned, and white wins the rook. So why is this step important when you calculate variations? The reason is that if you skip this step, you can very easily make an elementary mistake and lose the game, or lose material, or something like that. So, coming back to the start, you just use prophylactic thinking. What would my opponent play if it was his move? You see that this move is bishop f4, and then, only then, you start looking at your options. So what can you do? Now, the first thing that you do is not to try to defend against this threat of bishop f4, because you might have better moves that don't even allow him to play bishop f4. So what is the order of moves that we look at? Like, do you start with the move like g5, or moving your queen? How do you know where to start your calculation? This is the second thing I want to stress in this course, and I will stress it a lot. When you start to look for your candidate moves, you start with the most forced moves. And I've seen this mistake a lot with club players. When there is a position with forced moves, and by the way here it's not exactly this kind of position, we will see it shortly, they start offering some moves like queen d7 or queen d8, which are good moves, but it's not the move that you should consider first. First, you should consider the most forced moves, which are check, take, and attack. So these three you have to remember. In most positions, especially in tactical positions, you have to consider check, take, and attack. In this order, because they are the most, basically by the order of forcefulness, let's say. So check is the most forcing move. Obviously you attack your opponent's king. Well, in this position we don't have a check. Then we look at captures. Again, this is not the kind of position where we actually have good captures, but just instinctively, just for a brief second, you just look at rook takes e3. Okay, it doesn't work. He takes, we don't have anything on g3. But you have to see these forcing moves first. Then we look at attacks, because that's the next kind of forcing move. And here indeed we have an attack, which is a move b5, attacking the queen. We briefly consider it, he takes it. We have to take it with the rook. And then we didn't actually, if we take it just to move further, we didn't actually accomplish anything with this, because we are still losing the rook. Okay, so now we have a better idea about the position. Checks, takes, and attacks don't work. So we move on to other moves that will be good for our position. And we can address this, as I said, with the move like queen d7, or pretty much any other move where maybe bishop b6 also works, where you don't allow this tactic to unfold. So remember, check, take, and attack. This will be the most important thing when you try to come up with candidate moves, not only for yourself, but also for your opponent. So let me show you an example where this actually can be seen very well. This position here, it is white to move. Now, if you start without calculating any variations, just looking at what your opponent would play if it was his move, using prophylactic thinking, you will see that the threat is queen takes b2. Okay, this is useful information. Now, what do you do with this information? Do you immediately rush to defend against this threat? No, that would be wrong calculation process. First, you look for checks. Even if he has a checkmate threat, you look for checks. Okay, you can see one knight c7, but he takes it, and we can't take back because of the checkmate, so we come back. That doesn't work. Is there any other check in this position? Yes, there is, but it looks really stupid at first. Queen b8. Okay, there is one idea here. If he takes with the rook, there is smothered mate, knight c7. But he can take with the king. So here, knight c7 wins on the spot. But what if he takes with the king? In that case, do we have a check? Yes, we do. Knight d7 check, king a8. And what then? We have another check, knight c7. He has to take with the rook. And then, if you can see, the rook can take, from f1, can take that rook with a check. And that will be a checkmate, back rank checkmate. So, to see this whole variation from the start, you need to have good visualization. Anyway, for this video course, the only prerequisite is that you have basic tactical skill, basic tactical knowledge, so typical patterns like the smothered mate, like elimination of defense, pins, double attacks, and other typical tactical devices. Nothing too advanced. So here we have several tactical devices, like luring. We lure the king to b8, then we give checks, and everything comes with the check. You see, the check is the first thing that we always have to look at, because there might be a forced win. Sometimes it happens with captures or attacks, threats, and in this case it all happened with the check. So why I said that you need to have good visualization skill is because this position has to be envisioned all the way here. It's not too difficult, but still it's 5 moves ahead, and some pieces are moving. You see, I will talk about visualization a bit more, and then I will give you some examples where there's what I call high traffic, which means there's a lot of pieces on a small area of the board, and when they start moving, you have to take this into account, and for some people it just, the position becomes blurry. But if you practice your visualization skill, then you can really pay attention to all these details when the pieces move. For instance, you have to foresee that the rook in this starting position will take the rook on f8 with a checkmate. So this is why check, take, attack is important. We always start looking at checks. This is also important. Let me show you another example. When you're trying to find your move, and then you have to look at checks, takes, and attacks for your opponent as well. So for instance here, you have a choice. You can take on c4, or you can play this move rook d2, attacking the pawn, so after he takes it, it's easier to get this pawn. You see, you can take it here, it's okay, but then you can't play rook d2, because he will do this, and he wins your rook, or he promotes. So you might get an idea to... Now of course, if he takes here, you can just play king f3, and this will probably be a draw. But you might get this idea of playing rook d2, just to make it faster. So now, if he does this, this, it's okay. You're even winning here. However, let's come back. When you consider playing rook d2, is c takes b3 the first move to consider? Maybe intuitively yes, but if you use the check, take, attack method of looking at candidate moves, the first move that you should look at after rook d2 is rook e2 check. Even though it looks very bad, let's just take a look at it. Rook takes e2, and now if he takes, of course it's good for white, he just goes king f2. But there is a move after you take the rook, c3. Very tricky idea. And suddenly the pawn on d3 is not attacked anymore. And you know what? These two pawns, there is a rule in rook endgames that the rook cannot fight against two pawns on the third rank. And whatever white does now, black is promoting queen. The king is too far away, can't get into the square of the c pawn, and the rook just on its own, it cannot fight against these pawns, as we can see here. So in this case, white has lost the game because of, if we come back all the way back here, because he didn't consider the check. He only considered taking on b3. And this is why also this check take attack method is the key when you look at the candidate moves for your opponent. So this is something that I will stress a lot. The second thing that we will take a look at is the calculation process. We start with prophylactic thinking first. So you look at what your opponent would do if it was his move. Then we move on to the second step, which is your candidate moves. And then thirdly, we look at, if you have a good candidate move, what your opponent will play. Because a lot of people, they see a good move for themselves, or at least what seems like to be a good move, and they just don't really consider what their opponent might play. And then they miss something for their opponent. So it is in these three steps, prophylactic thinking, candidate moves, and opponent's resources, that most elementary mistakes are made. Not that much in further calculation, like on move 2 or 3, but actually in these first three. So this will be the second point that we will stress in this course, these three calculation steps, initial calculation steps. And then to improve our calculation of longer variations and more complex variations, I will really explain and try to see at a lot of examples of these typical calculation trees where you need to use good visualization. So types of calculation trees that we will take a look at, it will be high traffic. As I explained, a lot of pieces on the same on a small area of the board. Maybe I have a good example here. For instance, here. Okay, it's not such high traffic. I mean, there are a lot of pieces, but you still have to slow down a bit and see what's happening in the position. It's not as simple as the previous example. And here you need to, it's white to move. To find the winning continuation here, you need to see the moving parts. So in your mind, you have to visualize how the pieces are moving without them actually being moved on the board. And this is a fairly simple example. Maybe you have already seen, while I was talking about all this theory, maybe you already have seen the solution. The solution has something to do with threatening checkmate here. Now if queen can take on e5, it will be a checkmate. So the queen from c7 protects e5, but we have this really elegant move, rook d7, attacking both the queen and the bishop. If he takes it with the queen, we take on e5, and it's unstoppable checkmate on g7. Otherwise, if he takes with the bishop, suddenly the c file opens, the queen is undefended, and we have bishop takes f7, takes, and we take the queen, and we win the game. This is relatively the best for black, so rook d7, he has to take with the bishop. Sorry, the bishop is supposed to take with a check, and then we take the queen. So to see all of this, and this is not a terribly difficult combination to see in advance, you need to have fairly good visualization. And then to see even more complex and longer variations, you just need to improve it. And as I said, practice makes perfect. This is especially true when it comes to calculation. The more you practice, the better. If you're not happy with your calculation skill, the reason is probably that you need more practice. So I hope that this course will be helpful to you. I will also try to stress some things like blindfold calculation. This is already slightly more advanced, but it's also the key. If you can get to the level where you can effortlessly calculate variations, or at least simple variations, blindfolded, that's already pretty high level. I will not really talk too much about more advanced calculation topics like very deep calculation, improving speed of calculation, improving your tactical imagination, tactical vision. I mean, these are the things that, as I said, are a bit more advanced, and of course you can improve all these skills as you solve more and more examples that will be offered in this course, but it's not the primary goal. As I said, primary goals here are to improve to give you a structure, to eliminate the number of elementary mistakes, and also to improve your visualization. So I hope that you will enjoy the course, that you will learn something new, and ultimately that your calculation process will improve as a result.